Imagine getting the strongest class in the entire game, only for everyone around you to think it's complete trash. Yeah, that's exactly what happened to Elymas. For as long as he could remember, Elymas always had a strange feeling whenever he learned something new, like he'd already known it before. But everything changed on the day he underwent the Divine Blessing Ceremony, the ritual that determines a person's class and future. As the ceremony began, the feeling of déjà vu became stronger than ever. Standing before the priest as the heir of the prestigious Hedwig family, Elymas suddenly realized why. This world was identical to a VR game he had played obsessively in his previous life, a game called Magic World. And if this really was that game, then there was only one class he wanted. The most broken class in existence. When the blessing was complete, his status appeared. Class, Heavy Knight. The moment Elymas saw it, he couldn't stop smiling. He had actually gotten it. The strongest late-game class in the entire game. But instead of celebrating, his father looked horrified. He demanded to know if there had been some mistake. Maybe Elymas had received Master Swordsman instead? Unfortunately, there was no mistake. Heavy Knight. A class that this world's people considered completely worthless. While Elymas knew its true potential, everyone else only saw terrible starting stats, almost no skills, and painfully slow growth. To them, it was nothing more than a defective class. His father was furious. When Elymas tried explaining that Heavy Knights possess the highest HP and defensive potential of any class, his father didn't care. He slammed him to the ground and called the class a disgrace. Then, as if things couldn't get worse, another person stepped forward for her blessing. Malice. A girl from a branch family who had known Elymas since childhood. The moment her blessing finished, the hall erupted. She had received the Master Swordsman class. One of the most respected classes in existence. Suddenly, Elymas' father completely changed his attitude. He praised Malice, declared her the family's new heir, and even called her his daughter. Then he turned toward Elymas and disowned him on the spot. No matter how much Elymas argued, his father refused to listen. He was stripped of his status, kicked out of the family estate, handed a tiny amount of money, and thrown into the streets before the day was over. Just like that, he lost everything. His home. His family. His future. But unlike everyone else, Elymas knew something they didn't. Heavy Knight wasn't weak. It was absolutely broken. Later that night, after settling into a cheap inn, he opened his status screen to verify something important. If this world really followed the game's mechanics, then Heavy Knight still possessed its hidden potential. And thankfully, it did. Looking through his skill tree, he found the skill that made the class infamous, Oath of Heavy Armor. Most players hated it because it was difficult to use properly. But Elymas knew better. Without hesitation, he invested all 5 of his starting skill points into it. Immediately, multiple abilities unlocked, including one incredibly powerful skill. Rampart Reflection. A counter skill that used his defense stat to reflect damage back at enemies. The moment he unlocked it, Elymas knew his plan would work. The next day, he headed into a nearby forest to begin leveling. Before long, a giant frog-like monster called a Rana attacked him. Instead of dodging, Elymas simply stood still. The monster slammed directly into his armor, and instantly paid the price. Rampart Reflection activated. The Rana was crushed by its own attack and died on the spot. Just like that, Elymas jumped from level 1 to level 2. His strategy was working perfectly. After collecting the monster's magic stone, he prepared to continue hunting. But suddenly, a desperate scream echoed through the forest. A terrified adventurer came running straight toward him with an entire pack of Ranas chasing behind him. The man begged for help. When Elymas calmly offered to handle the monsters, the adventurer nearly lost his mind. After all, Elymas looked like a complete beginner. There was no way someone that weak could stop an entire swarm. At least, that's what he thought. The Ranas charged. Elymas didn't move an inch. One after another, the monsters smashed into his armor. And one after another, they were obliterated by Rampart Reflection. Within moments, every single Rana was dead. The adventurer stood there completely speechless. Who was this monster wearing heavy armor? When asked for his name, Elymas almost introduced himself with his family's surname. But then he remembered. That family had abandoned him. So instead, he smiled and gave a new answer. My name is Elymas, the Heavy Knight. After wiping out the entire pack of Ranas, Elymas shoots up from level 2 all the way to level 8, earning himself the title Unwavering One. Seeing everything unfold exactly as he remembered, Elymas becomes even more convinced that this world follows the same rules as Magic World. Meanwhile, the adventurer he saved finally introduces himself. His name is Aruz. He explains that he left his village to become an adventurer, but nobody would party up with him because he hadn't even reached level 3 yet. If Elymas hadn't shown up, he would have been monster food by now. Naturally, Aruz is beyond grateful. But Elymas doesn't really care about the praise. All he wants are the magic stones. Still, Aruz isn't ready to let him go. He suggests forming a party together once they return to town. According to him, defensive classes like Heavy Knight are unpopular, and Elymas could use some allies. But Elymas immediately refuses. Because unlike everyone else, he understands exactly how broken his class can become. In a normal party, experience points get divided among members. That means slower leveling, slower growth, and fewer rewards. Elymas isn't interested in sharing. He wants every level, every title, every skill, and every advantage for himself. Besides, convincing people that Heavy Knight isn't trash would be more trouble than it's worth. As they continue walking, Aruz keeps trying to change his mind. He points out that Elymas can't spend his whole life farming weak frog monsters. Eventually he'll need to challenge stronger enemies. And right as he says that, something screeches from behind them. The moment both of them turn around, their blood runs cold. A giant spider monster emerges from the forest. Aruz immediately panics. Because this isn't some weak monster. It's an Aryan type. A level 16 monster. Double Elymas' current level. As the spider lunges forward, Aruz barely dodges and crashes onto the ground. Meanwhile, Elymas quickly checks its status. The numbers are bad. Really bad. Not only is the monster far stronger than him, but it also possesses dangerous skills like Poison and Flaming Claw. Even worse, Rampart Reflection won't work properly. The skill only activates if Elymas' defense greatly exceeds the enemy's attack. Against a monster this strong, that's impossible. One direct hit could end the fight instantly. Realizing how dangerous the situation is, Aruz blames himself. He says this is all his fault and tells Elymas to run. But instead of retreating, Elymas starts smiling. Because he just remembered something. Leveling from 2 to 8 gave him 7 new skill points. And he hasn't spent a single one yet. Immediately, he opens his skill tree and dumps every point into Oath of Heavy Armor. The moment he does, a new skill unlocks. Disarm. A skill that lowers an enemy's attack power by 20% whenever Elymas lands a successful hit. For an entire minute. The second he reads the description, everything clicks. This was exactly the skill he needed. Aryan type might be stronger right now. But if he can weaken it first, the fight becomes possible. Suddenly, what looked like certain death transforms into an opportunity. Elymas grips his sword and steps forward. The giant spider lets out another terrifying screech. Aruz watches in disbelief. A level 8 Heavy Knight is challenging a level 16 monster head-on. Anyone else would call it suicide. But Elymas has already made up his mind. Staring directly at the monster, he raises his weapon and taunts it. Come then, you ugly beast. I'll give you exactly what you're looking for. The spider immediately charges. And instead of fear, a grin spreads across Elymas' face. The giant spider let out another horrifying screech before charging forward. Its massive legs tore through the ground as it lunged toward him. But Elymas wasn't panicking. Because unlike Aruz, he knew this monster. He knew its attack patterns. Its movement range. Its habits. Every step the creature took felt familiar. You're not touching me that easily. The spider swung its razor-sharp legs again and again, but Elymas slipped through each attack by the smallest margins. Everything was under control. Until suddenly, magic circles appeared beneath the monster. Another rune formed in front of its mouth. And Elymas immediately recognized what was coming. Poison Beam. A glowing ball of venom shot toward him at full speed. Aruz shouted in panic. But instead of dodging, Elymas ran straight at it. The poison slammed into his body. Pain surged through him. His vision blurred for a moment. But that wasn't a mistake. It was bait. The attack had created exactly the opening he needed. Elymas burst forward and activated Disarm. His sword flashed. One of the spider's eyes exploded in a spray of blood. The damage itself wasn't impressive. But that wasn't the point. The moment his blade connected, the skill activated. The monster's attack power dropped by 20%. Step 1 complete. The spider shrieked in rage. Then immediately activated another skill. Flaming Claw. Its legs ignited as it rushed toward him again. Look out! Aruz screamed. But Elymas calmly stepped aside. The flaming attack barely missed him. Meanwhile, he was already doing the math in his head. Poison Beam cost 7 MP. Flaming Claw cost 5. The monster had already burned through most of its mana. And now, it only had 4 MP remaining. A grin slowly appeared on Elymas' face. The fight was moving exactly where he wanted it. He dashed forward again. Another opening. Another slash. Disarm activated a second time. This time his blade carved across the monster's stomach. The creature screamed in pain. Now its attack power had been reduced by 40%. On top of that, Elymas' newly acquired title, Unwavering One, boosted his defense even further. The pieces were finally falling into place. The spider still thought it was hunting prey. It had no idea it had already lost. The monster charged one final time. Desperate. Furious. Determined to crush him. And that's when Elymas stopped running. For the first time during the entire battle, he stood completely still. The spider rushed forward at full speed. Aruz's eyes widened. The monster crashed directly into Elymas' armor. And then, Rampart Reflection activated. A shockwave erupted. The spider's own attack was reflected straight back at it. Blood exploded from its mouth. Its body was launched backward before crashing into the ground. Silence filled the forest. The monster struggled to move. But it was already over. Elymas slowly walked forward, raised his sword, and drove it straight into the creature's chest. This is the end. The giant spider let out one final cry. Then it died. Instantly, notifications flooded his vision. Level 8. Level 9. Level 10. Level 11. Level 12. Just like that, Elymas gained 4 more levels and several skill points. As he reviewed his status, another message appeared. Oath of Heavy Armor cannot level up further. That made him smile. He remembered this mechanic from Magic World. Some skills had hidden advancement requirements. And reaching the cap usually meant something much stronger was waiting ahead. Then another notification appeared. New skill unlocked. Parry. A powerful defensive skill. Exactly what he needed. But before he could think about it any further, a familiar voice interrupted him. Aruz stared at him with a look that was somewhere between admiration and disbelief. Okay, seriously. Who the heck are you? The guy had just watched a level 8 heavy knight defeat a level 16 monster by himself. Something that shouldn't have been possible. Then Aruz laughed. I guess I was wrong about you. At this rate, you really can survive on your own. For the first time since meeting him, Elymas smiled back. But then he suddenly noticed something. Aruz looked pale. Way too pale. That's when he saw it. The poison status. Aruz had been infected during the fight. Despite everything, the guy had stayed behind. He had worried about Elymas until the very end. Without hesitation, Aruz helped support him as they started making their way back toward town. Don't worry, Aruz said with a grin. I'll make sure you get back safely. Elymas looked at him for a moment. Then nodded. Thanks, Aruz. After getting back to town, Elymas heads straight to the Adventurer Guild and officially registers as an adventurer. He's level 12, gets assigned the Heavy Knight class on his paperwork, and starts out as an F-rank adventurer. That might sound low, but there's a reason he's in a hurry to rank up. The guild has ranks from F all the way to S, and if he wants access to things like stream hole dungeons and higher skill progression for Oath of the Heavy Armor, he needs to reach E rank as soon as possible. First, though, he tries asking about joining a party. The reaction is about what you'd expect. The second people hear Heavy Knight, they start clowning on him. Nobody wants a slow defensive class on their team, and even the receptionist admits party openings for shield classes are rare. So instead of arguing, he drops a giant bag of magic stones on the counter. The whole guild goes quiet. Turns out every single stone came from monsters he killed himself. The receptionist is shocked, the other adventurers are confused, and suddenly the guy they were mocking a minute ago is getting a lot more attention. With registration done and enough money to survive for now, Elymas immediately asks about rank promotion quests. That's how he ends up getting dragged into a raid mission. The problem is that the guy supervising the promotion absolutely hates him. The moment they meet, the bearded veteran starts tearing into him. He doesn't believe the rumors about Elymas taking down a level 16 Aryan type and assumes he's just another rookie getting carried away by a lucky win. Still, Elymas needs this promotion, so he swallows his pride and agrees to cooperate. The raid party heads out, and one of the members, a red mage named Teal, uses a detection skill to locate the target. He finds a horde of around 30 monsters and immediately starts bragging about how useful his class is. Then he turns his attention to Elymas. Like everyone else, he feels sorry for him. From his perspective, getting stuck with Heavy Knight is basically a death sentence. Elymas isn't bothered. As a former Magic World player, he knows Red Mage was famous for being a jack-of-all-trades class. Strong on paper, but rarely the best at anything. Still, this world doesn't understand classes the same way the game did, so it's no surprise people rank it higher than Heavy Knight. Before the battle starts, the raid leader lays out the plan. Their real target is a gold head, a monster around level 30 that commands undead hordes. It isn't dangerous because of its combat ability. It's dangerous because it can keep creating more undead from corpses. The leader, a veteran adventurer around level 40, claims the gold head for himself. Everyone else is ordered to stay away from that fight and focus on clearing the weaker undead instead. According to the plan, everything should go smoothly. But after looking over the party, Elymas isn't nearly as confident. Between the timid members and the overconfident ones, he estimates the odds of everyone making it out alive at only 80%. Once the raid reaches the graveyard, he notices another problem. The leader's entire strategy is basically follow me, and that's it. So he points out that things could go wrong if the undead horde doesn't match the guild's information. The suggestion instantly annoys Gotan. The guy marches right up to him and demands to know who he thinks he is. Realizing he's talking to a much higher-ranked adventurer, Elymas quickly backs off and explains that the newer adventurers are nervous and would probably perform better with clearer instructions. That actually gets through to him. Unfortunately, Teal immediately jumps in and starts mocking Elymas instead. According to him, the only person scared of a few undead is the Heavy Knight with a defective class. Before he can keep running his mouth, the graveyard suddenly comes alive. Undead start crawling out of the ground. And worse, the gold head is already there. The second Teal sees it, all that confidence disappears. He panics and practically begs for someone to save him. Gotan immediately takes command, ordering Teal and another adventurer to act as his support while he engages the boss. Meanwhile, Elymas focuses on the rest of the battlefield. The undead horde itself isn't the issue. The real problem is the party. Most of these adventurers have never fought a monster horde before, and now they're facing an undead commander on top of that. Add in the lack of preparation, and everyone is freezing up. So Elymas steps in and starts organizing them himself. He tells them to split into teams of 3 and watch each other's backs. That way no monster can slip through unnoticed. One of the adventurers agrees, but before they can continue, a zombie sneaks up behind him. Luckily, Elymas catches it first. He intercepts the attack with his new parry skill and cuts the zombie down before anyone gets hurt. With that, everyone gets their first look at what Heavy Knight can actually do. More undead rush him. He parries their attacks, creates openings, and uses disarm to weaken them. When others try to overwhelm him, Rampart Reflection sends the damage right back at them. In no time, he's handling multiple zombies by himself. The other adventurers can only stare. A class everyone called useless is carrying the front line. After clearing the immediate threat, Elymas gives the group one simple order. If anything unexpected happens, report it immediately. And if they get into trouble, he'll come running. At this point, the other adventurers start realizing something kind of ridiculous. The guy everyone laughed at earlier has already handled more than half the undead by himself. Even the people fighting beside him have to admit he's carrying the raid. While cleaning up zombies, Elymas levels up again and reaches level 16. Perry has been putting in serious work, and against large groups of enemies, it's turning out to be insanely efficient. Slowly but surely, his build is coming online. The funny part is that the adventurers have gone from thinking he's useless to being more intimidated by him than the undead. Not exactly the reputation he was aiming for. Eventually, most of the zombie horde gets wiped out, and the group starts wondering if they should go help Gotan finish off the boss. Elymas immediately shuts that idea down. The gold head is way above their level, and honestly, Gotan seems to have everything under control. Looking over at the fight, it's hard to disagree. Gotan is dominating. He dodges the monster's attacks, lands clean hits with his axe, and even uses rock shatter to deal massive damage. By this point, the gold head's HP has dropped all the way down to 20. One more solid hit and the fight should be over. The only problem is that the remaining undead keep getting in the way. Gotan gets annoyed and starts yelling at Teal and Paul for not doing their jobs properly. The two are still too scared to get close to the boss, which only makes him angrier. Meanwhile, Elymas keeps watching the battle. Something feels off. Then the gold head suddenly grabs one of its own undead and starts eating it. Everyone freezes. The monster's wounds begin healing right in front of them. At first, Elymas assumes it's using Consume Corpse, a skill he already knows about. But then he notices something strange. A normal Consume Corpse only needs to be used once. This thing keeps devouring undead after undead. That's when a terrible possibility pops into his head. Something is very, very wrong. The gold head finishes consuming the corpses and starts changing. Its body swells. Its muscles grow larger. Its teeth become more monstrous. The entire thing begins transforming into something far more dangerous. Gotan doesn't realize what's happening. Seeing the undead horde disappear, he assumes the boss is on its last legs and charges in for the finishing blow. The second Elymas figures out what's really happening, he immediately shouts for him to stop and get away from the monster. But by then, the evolution has already begun. Right in front of everyone, the ghoul head suddenly evolves into a mad header, jumping from level 32 all the way to level 40. Elymas immediately realizes how bad this is, while Gotan can only stare in shock, wondering what just happened. The narrator explains that existence evolution is an incredibly rare hidden ability. It only activates under special circumstances when a monster is pushed into a corner, causing it to mutate into an entirely different race. The developers of Magic World never revealed the exact conditions, but judging by this situation, it almost feels like it happens when your luck completely runs out. Elymas instantly warns Gotan to get out of the way, but it's already too late. The mad header lets out a roar that stuns him. Elymas orders Teal and Paul to distract it, but Teal refuses. One magic attack won't do anything, and getting close just means instant death. If Gotan falls here, they have no chance of winning. A second later, the monster slams Gotan into the ground. He coughs up blood and is hit with paralysis. Just as the mad header is about to finish him off, Elymas jumps in and blocks the attack with parry. The impact sends him flying backward, and he has to drive his sword into the ground just to stop himself. Elymas tells Teal to grab Gotan and get him somewhere safe. Heal him first, then remove the paralysis. Teal admits he has heal but never learned para-heal because he spent all his skill points on attack booster. Elymas tells him to stop arguing, get Gotan out of there, and heal whatever he can. The narrator explains that the mad header's numbing attacks inflict paralysis that naturally wears off after 3 minutes. If they can somehow survive that long, Teal's healing should be enough to get Gotan back into the fight. But this isn't just a game anymore. Those 3 minutes suddenly feel a lot longer. Elymas steps forward and declares he'll hold the mad header off until Gotan recovers. The nearby adventurers think he's completely insane. He's only F rank, and one of them even tells everyone to run while the monster is distracted because if Elymas dies, they'll be next. Even Elymas knows how hopeless it looks. He's only level 16 against a level 40 monster, and one mistake means certain death. The mad header throws a punch, but he barely dodges it. The next attack forces him to use parry again, sending him crashing back. As he gets back to his feet, he admits this is exactly the situation he wanted to avoid. But at the same time, it's also the perfect chance to push his skills to the absolute limit. Wiping the blood from his mouth, He grins and reminds himself that every real adventurer lives for moments like this. The other adventurers can't believe what they're seeing. They thought Elymas would get crushed instantly, but somehow he's actually keeping up with the Mad Hatter. After watching it nearly kill Gaotan, they realize the fact that Elymas is still alive is nothing short of a miracle. Even so, Elymas knows he can't survive forever by just dodging. If he wants any chance of winning, he has to start dealing damage. Right then, his beginner swordsmanship reaches level 5 and unlocks a new skill called Vital Slice. It's a technique that delivers a powerful thrust from point-blank range and can even pierce enemies with high defense. The Mad Hatter charges again, but Elymas blocks with parry, catches himself, dodges the follow-up attack, slips underneath the monster, and lands a perfect Vital Slice from behind. The hit actually staggers it. Elymas realizes why the skill is underrated. Most players avoid it because you have to get dangerously close to your target, but for a heavy knight with low attack and high defense, it's practically made for him. Of course, he knows one good hit isn't enough to finish a level 40 monster. The Mad Hatter goes into a frenzy, throwing punch after punch while Elymas keeps barely avoiding every attack. As the fight drags on, he notices its movements getting sloppier. Smiling, he taunts the monster, knowing this was his job all along. Then the real finisher arrives. The instant the Mad Hatter exposes its back, Gaotan leaps into the air and brings his axe down with Dragon Slayer Split. The attack tears straight through the monster's skull, blood bursts from the wound, and the Mad Hatter finally collapses. With the battle over, Elymas jumps from level 13 all the way to level 23. Gaotan is stunned that an F-rank adventurer managed to survive a monster that almost killed him. Elymas simply admits he was already at his limit. Then, to everyone's surprise, Gaotan bows his head and apologizes. He admits Elymas was right about his poor judgment and reckless leadership. As thanks, Gaotan tells Elymas to keep the monster's drops. Elymas hesitates since a level 40 magic stone alone is worth a fortune, but Gaotan insists the victory belongs to him. Among the loot is an even bigger surprise. A Demon's Rage shield worth 3 million gold. Besides its massive defense boost, it also powers up the user's next attack after successfully blocking an enemy strike. Elymas immediately realizes how perfectly it works with tamper deflection, though selling it for 3 million gold is definitely tempting too. Before leaving, Elymas asks about his rank promotion. Gaotan promises he'll personally make sure the guild promotes him to E rank and says anyone who complains will have to answer to him. Meanwhile, Teal tries to argue that his healing deserves a promotion too, but Gaotan immediately shuts him down. Freezing in fear during battle isn't exactly promotion material, so Teal is told to gain more experience before asking again. Back at the guild, Elymas receives his rewards. Between the raid payment and selling all the magic stones, he earns a massive amount of gold, including 600,000 just for the evolved Mad Hatter's magic stone. Even Gaotan jokes that this is probably the only time Elymas will ever make more money than him. Watching all this, the other adventurers become suspicious. They can't believe a defensive heavy knight keeps bringing back high-level magic stones and accuse him of cheating. Gaotan immediately slams the counter and warns them that doubting Elymas means doubting him as well. That single statement shuts everyone up. Thanks to Gaotan's support, Elymas is officially promoted to E rank without any further trouble. As he walks through the city afterward, Elymas starts thinking about his next goal. Now that he has access to dream halls, making money will be much easier. But as he grows stronger, tamper deflection won't be enough on its own anymore. That means it's finally time to search for the skill book Fong of Smoldering Insanity, the item he considers essential to bringing out a heavy knight's true potential. Elymas explains that a heavy knight isn't truly complete until it has two key skills, Fong of Smoldering Insanity and Oath of the Heavy Armor. Once those are combined, the class stops being just a defensive tank and turns into something much deadlier. In his eyes, a fully built heavy knight is basically a walking weapon. Knowing how important Fong of Smoldering Insanity is, Elymas starts searching every item shop in town, even though he doubts he'll find something that rare. He ends up buying 3 healing potions for 72,000 gold, and while paying, asks the shopkeeper where he can buy skill books. The woman is surprised and asks if he's a new adventurer. Then she drops some bad news. Selling skill books is illegal. If adventurers find one themselves, they can use it, but almost every skill book gets bought by the Adventurers Guild and shipped off to nobles and the church instead. That completely catches Elymas off guard. If that's true, there's a good chance his own noble family, the Atmagons, is hoarding the very skill books he's looking for. He realizes the gap between the game and reality is even bigger than he expected. Seeing his reaction, the shopkeeper decides to secretly help him. She draws him a map and tells him about a hidden black market shop, warning him not to tell anyone in power about it. Elymas recognizes it immediately. It's a stripping shop, a place that sells equipment taken from dead adventurers. He points out those items are supposed to be handed over to the guild, but the shopkeeper explains there's an unspoken agreement. The guild knows these shops exist and lets them operate because many adventurers rely on them to survive. Besides, the guild isn't innocent either. Instead of returning valuable items, they often use them to gain favor with nobles. Skill books suffer the same fate. The nobles buy them cheaply, never use them, and simply lock them away. Hearing that, Elymas can't help getting angry. He realizes that if he had inherited his family's position without recovering his memories, he probably would have become part of the same corrupt system. After thanking the shopkeeper, Elymas follows the map and eventually finds the hidden store. The place is dusty and packed with old gear, but before long he spots exactly what he came for. A shelf with 5 skill books. The old witch running the shop immediately mocks his cheap equipment but lets him browse anyway. The first book he checks is Beginner Archery, and it already costs 2 million gold. Then she casually tells him the real price is actually 3 million because of the risk she takes selling these books. Elymas quickly realizes just how expensive the black market is. Even if he sold the Demon's Rage Shield, he'd barely have enough money for a single rare skill book. He looks through the rest of the shelf. Beginner Archery, Magic Booster, Jack in the Box, Elemental God. They're all valuable, but none are what he's after. Then he sees it. Fong of Smoldering Insanity. His eyes light up instantly. This is the one skill every heavy knight absolutely needs. If he can get it, his entire build will finally come together. The witch notices his reaction and asks if that's the one he wants. Elymas eagerly asks for the price. 50 million gold. The number hits him like a truck. Trying to lighten the mood, he jokes that it's surprising such an expensive item doesn't even have a bodyguard. The witch simply warns him to try stealing it if he thinks she's weak, casually mentioning she beat up 5 thieves just the other day. Realizing he has no chance of buying it now, Elymas asks if she'll keep the book reserved until he earns enough money. At first she asks what she'd gain from that, but after a moment she agrees. Then, with perfect merchant logic, she adds one condition. Reserving the book will cost an extra 5 million gold. Elymas can only sigh. Looks like making money just became his biggest priority. Outside the shop, Elymas sits down and does the math. 55 million gold would take almost 60 raid quests to earn. No wonder wealthy merchants and top-ranked adventurers have completely lost touch with how much money that really is. He starts thinking through every possible way to make that kind of fortune. Farming rare drops, grinding weak monsters with rampart reflection, learning new skills through beginner swordsmanship. One by one, he rejects every idea. Most of them would take far too long, and investing skill points now could end up being a waste if he eventually gets Fong of Smoldering Insanity. Then another idea hits him. Heavy knights may not be popular, but after the recent raid, his name should be getting around. If he forms a party, he'll have far more options in battle. Right then, he overhears a group of adventurers arguing over a rare drop worth 2 million gold. A cheerful clown-class girl named Roosh proudly says the reward was only possible because of her skills, but the others don't see it that way. The swordsman, Clean, says they only got the drop after repeatedly clearing dream holes, and he doesn't think her abilities had much to do with it. Roosh stays optimistic, insisting her skills will prove their value over time. Then Clean asks if she seriously expects a share of the money. Roosh is stunned. She reminds them she fought alongside everyone else and only asks for a small cut. Even 100,000 gold would be enough. Instead, Clean calls her useless. He says she has no decent attack skills and can barely distract enemies. Roosh fires back that she only built her skill tree the way he told her to. Now that they've finally earned real money, he's suddenly treating her like dead weight. Clean refuses to take responsibility. He says he only gave advice, and she chose to spend her own skill points. Watching everything unfold, Elymas realizes this is one of the biggest problems in Magic World. Players carefully plan their skill trees, but if circumstances change, those skill points are gone forever. Countless parties end up falling apart over bad builds and arguments about money. Clean tosses a few gold coins onto the ground and tells Roosh to take the 100,000 she asked for and leave. The rest of the party turns against her too, accusing her of caring more about money than the team. No matter how much Roosh apologizes and says she doesn't want any reward anymore, they've already made up their minds. Just like that, she's kicked out of the party. As they walk away, Elymas keeps thinking about what he heard earlier. They admitted they had to clear dream holes over and over before finally getting that rare drop, yet they still claimed Roosh's skill wasn't helping. That makes him suspicious. What kind of skill does she actually have? If it's the one he's thinking of, there's no way anyone in their right mind would throw her out of the party. Before Roosh can run after her former teammates, still apologizing and begging them to let her stay, Elymas reaches out and grabs her hand. Then he surprises her with a single question. "Would you form a party with me?" Completely caught off guard, Roosh blurts out, "Who the heck are you, you freak?" Still holding Roosh's hand, Elymas desperately begs her to join him. He promises he won't let anything bad happen to her and even blurts out an absurd offer. They'll split the rewards 80 to 20, with Roosh taking the 80%. She's completely overwhelmed and tells him to calm down before asking him to let go of her hand first. Realizing how crazy he looks, Elymas quickly apologizes and releases her. Just then, Clean and the others come back. Clean demands to know who Elymas is and why he's interfering. Elymas introduces himself and openly says he heard Roosh had been kicked out, so he wanted to recruit her instead. Clean laughs and calls him insane. Roosh has almost no combat ability and can barely level up. But Elymas doesn't hesitate. He says that doesn't matter to him at all. Clean mocks him even more, saying he'll regret taking in someone so useless. Hearing that only makes Elymas angrier. When Clean smugly tells him he has permission to take her, Elymas fires back that he never asked for it. Clean then sizes him up, asking his level and rank. Elymas reveals he's a level 23 heavy knight traveling alone and recently became an E-rank adventurer. That surprises them. Clean still insists Roosh is dead weight, and even Roosh tries to talk Elymas out of recruiting her since she's only level 13. Once again, Elymas says he doesn't care. Rise suddenly points out something interesting. Why would an E-rank adventurer be this desperate to recruit Roosh unless she actually had something valuable? For a second, Elymas realizes he may have been a little too eager. Clean quickly whispers to Rise that they're overthinking it. As long as Roosh leaves quietly, it's the perfect outcome. If people hear they kicked someone out over a bad skill build, it'll make the whole party look terrible. The two immediately change their attitude. Instead of insulting Roosh, they suddenly congratulate Elymas and happily say they're glad she's going to someone who'll take good care of her. Seeing there's nothing left tying her to them, Roosh bows to Elymas, accepts his offer, and officially joins his party. Elymas smiles and realizes she's the very first teammate he's ever recruited. Clean gives them a fake congratulations, then throws another 100,000 gold onto the ground as a so-called farewell gift. Roosh instinctively moves to pick it up, but Elymas stops her. He tells Clean that if he wants the money off the ground, he can pick it up himself. Throwing gold in the dirt as a farewell gift is just insulting. More importantly, accepting it would leave them indebted to people like that. Even though 100,000 gold is a huge amount, Roosh trusts his judgment and walks away with him. Furious, Clean calls both of them useless and tells them to enjoy failing together before picking the money back up himself. Later, the two sit down at a tavern. Roosh sincerely thanks Elymas for giving someone like her a chance but warns him she really doesn't have much fighting ability. Elymas isn't worried. He tells her that as long as she fights monsters suited to her skill tree, her level will catch up eventually. Still confused, Roosh asks the question that's been bothering her the whole time. Did he rescue her because it was love at first sight? She even admits she thinks he's pretty charming too and if possible, would like to start as friends. Elymas immediately shuts that idea down. Looking her straight in the eye, he asks the one question he's been waiting to ask all along. You have the Lady Luck skill tree, don't you? The narrator explains that dungeons, called dream holes in this world, are actually the nightmares of the creator god, Elymas. After existing for eternity and creating the world along with all the other gods, Elymas eventually lost his sanity. The god sealed him away, but his nightmares still leak into reality, and the monsters born from those dreams become the creatures adventurers fight today. Standing before a dream hole, Elymas tells Roosh this is where they'll be making their fortune. Roosh is still nervous, wondering if bringing someone as weak as her was really a good idea. She even shows him her stats, pointing out that her only attack skill, Dice Thrust, is only reliable if she rolls a 6. Looking back, she regrets spending so many skill points on things like acrobatics and attack boosters instead. Elymas just smiles and tells her not to worry because she's exactly who he needs. Roosh immediately starts overthinking what he meant, but Elymas cuts straight to the plan. By the end of this trip, they're making 30 million gold, and she's reaching level 30. She stares at him like he's completely insane. Elymas also reminds her not to casually show people her status screen, since that's dangerous information to share. Roosh admits she had no idea. The two enter the dream hole. Even though the recommended level is 50, Elymas already knows which monsters appear near the entrance, so they won't be taking unnecessary risks. The plan is simple. He'll hold the monsters in place while Roosh lands the finishing blows so she can level up as quickly as possible. Roosh is determined to prove herself. After all, Elymas even bought her an expensive iron piercer knife that boosts attack and lowers an enemy's defense every time it hits. She promises she'll do everything she can to live up to his expectations. Their first target soon appears. A level 20 patchwork bear. Despite looking adorable at first, Elymas warns her not to underestimate it. He already knows exactly how it fights and tells Roosh to stay behind it while he keeps its attacks under control. Using a new skill called Shadow Storm, which he unlocked after fighting the Mad Header, Elymas pins the monster's shadow to the ground so it can't escape. He warns Roosh to watch out for its claws and fangs. She points out the bear doesn't even have any. Right on cue, claws burst from its paws, another mouth opens across its stomach, and it charges. Elymas blocks the attack with his shield and pins the monster down, giving Roosh the perfect opening. She rushes in and keeps stabbing until the patchwork bear finally goes down. Instead of celebrating, Roosh immediately complains that it didn't even drop any loot and jokingly threatens the monster's corpse. Elymas laughs and tells her not to worry. They're only here to level her up, and they'll be fighting plenty more. Almost immediately, another patchwork bear shows up. They repeat the same strategy, and this time it works even better. Not only does the bear drop an item, but the next one does too. Roosh excitedly shows Elymas the bear shield they just found. It's a beginner shield worth 200,000 gold, and she happily tells him he should keep one. Watching multiple rare drops appear back to back, Elymas starts putting the pieces together. Roosh's special skill, Cat's Paw, increases her luck by an incredible 500%. If all her early skill points also went into luck, then these insane drop rates suddenly make perfect sense. He realizes her old party completely overlooked her true value. Since she'd always been with them, they probably assumed getting rare drops that often was normal. Meanwhile, Roosh happily asks if she was finally useful. Elymas honestly tells her he's glad she agreed to join him. Thinking he's excited about the bear shields, Roosh suggests they farm 10 more of them. Elymas laughs and tells her they're done farming beginner monsters. She checks her status and is shocked to see she's already jumped from level 13 to level 20. With the leveling complete, Elymas reveals the real objective. Now it's time to hunt the Golden Rana. Elymas explains that Rana are frog-type monsters and were actually the first enemies he ever defeated after arriving in this world. There are many different kinds, but today they're hunting the rarest one of all, the Golden Rana. He picked this dream hole specifically because it's the best place to find them. Golden Ranas have an incredibly low spawn rate, but if you manage to kill one, there's a high chance it'll drop an extremely valuable item. They're basically the jackpot monsters of Magic World. They barely have any attack power, no offensive skills, and give huge amounts of experience, so players in the game loved farming them whenever they appeared. Elymas already knows exactly where they spawn most often and the safest route to reach them. Roosh says she's heard stories about Golden Ranas too. Adventurers claimed finding one could make you rich, but catching it was almost impossible. They're so fast that people can't keep up with them, and chasing one usually lures you deeper into the dungeon, where stronger monsters are waiting. That makes Elymas realize something. In the game, failing just meant trying again. In this world, failure means death. No wonder everyone builds their characters around survival instead of taking risks. He explains that Golden Ranas have ridiculously high speed and defense stats. They also nullify buffs, status effects, and most attacks. Even Roosh's Iron Piercer, which ignores part of an enemy's defense, won't do enough damage. His own situation isn't any better. Rampart Reflection can't hurt it, Vital Slice barely scratches it, and the frog is far too fast for either of them. Roosh starts wondering if this is simply impossible. But Elymas stays completely confident. He says every monster has a weakness, and the Golden Rana is no exception. He already knows how to beat it. Roosh asks if he has some special skill that can actually damage it. Instead of answering, Elymas smiles and says he's counting on her. She freezes. I'm the one who's supposed to beat it? As they keep searching, Elymas tells her to spend all 8 of her newly earned skill points on Fool's Acrobatics. The 2 skills she'll unlock from that tree are essential to his strategy. Roosh is still unsure, but she trusts him. Before she can ask anything else, a toy box monster suddenly attacks. Elymas blocks the hit and immediately tells her to run instead of fighting it. If they corner that monster, it'll just summon reinforcements. Roosh points out they could gain even more levels by defeating everything they come across, but Elymas refuses. Their current levels are exactly where they need to be for hunting the Golden Rana, and wasting time on other monsters would only slow them down. Hours pass without finding a single one. Roosh starts realizing just how incredibly rare these monsters really are. Elymas tells her that's exactly why they're worth chasing. Then he reminds her that even with her incredible luck can't increase the spawn rate of a monster that barely appears in the first place. If she starts feeling nervous or wants to stop, she just has to tell him. Instead, Roosh smiles and says she'll keep following him wherever he goes. A moment later, she suddenly points ahead. Sir Elymas, isn't that a Golden Rana? The two of them stop in their tracks as they finally come face to face with the monster they've been searching for. Elymas can't believe his eyes. A Golden Rana actually appeared, and way sooner than he expected. The level 40 monster quietly sits in front of them while Roosh whispers in disbelief, asking what they should do. Elymas tells her the most important rule when hunting a Golden Rana is to stay calm. Roosh immediately starts taking deep breaths to steady herself. After the frog begins moving, Elymas checks one last thing. Did she spend all her new skill points on Fool's Acrobatics like he asked? She nods and says she unlocked both of the required skills. Perfect. Elymas reminds her of the plan. He'll be waiting ahead while Roosh circles behind the Golden Rana and drives it toward him. Even then, she's still shaking with nerves. Elymas reassures her that even if they fail, it'll be okay. After another deep breath, Roosh finally gathers her courage and charges. As she runs, Elymas explains why this strategy works. A Golden Rana automatically runs away whenever an adventurer gets within 13 feet. Coincidentally, the hallways of Angel's Playbox are exactly 13 feet wide, making it impossible to get around the monster by simply running past it. Unless. Instead of staying on the ground, Roosh uses acrobatic amble to run along the wall and slip behind the frog. Then she activates Doppel Illusion, filling the hallway with illusionary copies of herself. The Golden Rana can see through illusions, but because it's naturally timid, it still refuses to charge through them. Trapped between Roosh's illusions and the narrow hallway, it has only one escape route. Straight toward Elymas. Now everything comes down to one move. Elymas knows Shadow Storm is one of the few abilities that actually works on a Golden Rana, but landing it is another story. The frog is 3 times faster than he is, and its tiny shadow gives him almost no room for error. As the Golden Rana leaps toward him, Elymas pulls out a holy magic stone he bought alongside Roosh's Iron Piercer. Normally, it's considered almost useless because its healing effect is so weak. But Elymas has a different use for it. He throws the stone into the air. A burst of bright light fills the hallway, creating a sharp shadow beneath the Golden Rana just as it jumps. That single moment is all Elymas needs. He stomps on the shadow and activates Shadow Storm. The bind works. Smiling to himself, Elymas realizes they've finally done it. They've caught a Golden Rana. After Elymas traps the Golden Rana with Shadow Stomp, Roosh excitedly runs over, convinced they've already won. Then she pauses and realizes something. Wait, how are we actually supposed to finish it off? The Golden Rana desperately struggles to escape Shadow Stomp, but the bind holds. Elymas explains that the only way to damage it is with a critical hit. A critical strike deals 1.5 times the normal damage and ignores 50% of an enemy's defense. Roosh cheers him on, thinking he just has to land one. But Elymas shakes his head. Even if he lands a critical hit, his attack still isn't strong enough to get through the Golden Rana's defenses. Once again, He tells her he's counting on her. Rouge is completely caught off guard. She admits she's barely ever landed a critical hit before. Elymas tells her that's normally true, but she already has the perfect skill. Dice Thrust. The skill randomly rolls a number from 1 to 6 every time it activates. Then Elymas reveals the trick. If Dice Thrust rolls a 6, it's automatically treated as a critical hit. That boosts the attack to 1.95 times its normal power, and when it's combined with the Iron Piercer's 15% defense penetration plus the critical hit's 50% defense pierce, it'll finally be enough to break through the Golden Rana's defenses. Rouge still isn't sure it'll work. Elymas tells her there are no useless classes and no useless skills. Some builds simply take longer to shine. Clean and his party only saw the beginning of her potential before deciding she was worthless. Then he looks at her and says it again. I need your strength, Rouge. Those words give her the confidence she needed. Determined to prove everyone wrong, Rouge charges at the Golden Rana and activates Dice Thrust. The number spins. 6. A guaranteed critical hit. Her blade pierces straight through the Golden Rana, sending it crashing into the wall before it finally dies. Rouge immediately jumps from level 20 to level 27, while Elymas rises from level 23 to level 30. But Elymas reminds her the experience isn't the real prize. Golden Ranas have a 50% chance to drop an incredibly valuable item. The two stare at the corpse. Then a weapon appears. A dazzling Rana decorative blade, worth 17 million gold. Rouge excitedly says they just made 1.7 million gold. Elymas quickly corrects her. She's missing a zero. It's worth 17 million. Rouge recounts the number, completely freezes, and promptly collapses from the shock. After she finally recovers, she still can't believe they earned that much so easily. She even suggests they grab the sword, run to a remote village, and retire for the rest of their lives. Elymas almost agrees. Then says they're going to hunt one more before sunset. Rouge can only stare at him in disbelief. 3 hours later, after missing several Dice Thrust rolls, she finally gets another lucky 6 and defeats a second Golden Rana. It drops another dazzling Rana decorative blade. Elymas reaches level 33, Rouge reaches level 31, and realizing they're now carrying 34 million gold worth of loot is enough to make her pass out all over again. When she wakes up, Elymas congratulates her. Thanks to her, they pulled off something incredible. Now they can finally start planning her future skill build. Before they can leave, Rouge suddenly stops. She hears a baby crying somewhere in the dungeon. Elymas immediately recognizes it. A wandering. He explains that every dream hole has a dream lord hidden deep inside it. Normally it never leaves its chamber, but on rare occasions it wanders through the dungeon. That's what's called a wandering. Rouge panics since this dungeon is meant for level 50 adventurers. Elymas stays calm. As long as they walk in the opposite direction of the crying, the Dream Lord will never chase them outside the dungeon. That should have been the end of it. Then someone suddenly screams for help. 2 badly injured adventurers stumble toward them, saying a monster stronger than anything they've ever faced just attacked them. Elymas immediately realizes this isn't a game anymore. If he walks away now, those 2 are guaranteed to die. Without hesitating, he tells Rouge to guide the injured adventurers to the exit while he distracts the Dream Lord. Rouge worries that even he can't survive against a level 50 boss. Elymas says he already knows how the Dream Lord fights. Buying everyone enough time to escape is something he can handle. After all, that's exactly what a heavy knight is supposed to do. With that, Elymas steps forward alone and comes face to face with the blood-stained Tin Knight, its sword still covered in fresh blood. Elymas immediately tells Rouge to take care of the injured adventurers while he buys them enough time to escape. Although Rouge hesitates, the wounded warrior desperately thanks Elymas for risking his life to save them. Standing before him is a terrifying Tin Knight, a level 40 monster. After checking its stats, Elymas notices its HP isn't completely full, making the situation slightly better than the absolute worst-case scenario. Seeing the weakened enemy, Rouge suggests they fight together and defeat it, but Elymas immediately refuses. He orders her to run while she still can because the Tin Knight isn't the true Dream Lord of the dungeon, it's merely the Dream Lord's servant. The real nightmare hasn't even appeared yet. Moments later, thunder echoes throughout the dungeon as another Tin Knight emerges. Then another, and another. In an instant, 3 level 40 Tin Knights surround them. Rouge is horrified, But Elymas remains calm, telling her he'll buy enough time for everyone to escape before following behind. Rouge refuses, insisting she can't abandon him to fight 3 monsters alone. She reminds him that she chose to become his party member and intends to stand by him no matter what. Knowing she would never willingly leave, Elymas deliberately hurts her feelings. He coldly tells her these aren't enemies he can fight while dragging around a handicap like her, and that she'd only get in his way. The words strike Rouge like a blade. Fighting back tears, she apologizes, promises to wait for him outside, and reluctantly runs away. As soon as she's gone, Elymas drops the act. He admits to himself that everything he said was a lie. With 3 level 40 monsters already surrounding him and the true Dream Lord still lurking somewhere nearby, victory seems impossible. Even escaping isn't realistic since his Heavy Knight class has terrible speed, and if the Dream Lord joins the fight, its ranged magic would make fleeing completely impossible. Just then, the true ruler of the dungeon finally reveals itself. The Dream Lord appears in its embryo form, a grotesque floating baby with a giant eyeball embedded in its forehead. Despite being the boss of a level 50 dungeon, its offensive stats aren't particularly overwhelming. The real problem is its absurd defense. The only place capable of taking damage is the massive eye on its forehead, and that weak point can only be struck by long-range attacks. Even so, Elymas realizes this is one of the rare Dream Lords that even lower-level adventurers can theoretically defeat. With a grin, Elymas challenges the monster, declaring he'll gladly give it the battle it wants. At that exact moment, his Oath of the Heavy Armor skill reaches level 27, unlocking a brand new ability, Shield Bash. As the 3 Tin Knights charge simultaneously, Elymas instantly tests his new skill. He slams his shield into one knight, launching it across the room where it crashes violently into a wall. The powerful knockback immediately separates one enemy from the others, giving Elymas some much-needed breathing room. He continues weaving between the remaining knights, perfectly timing parry before following up with disarm, knocking one knight's weapon away. While simultaneously battling 2 opponents, he notices something interesting about the embryo. It possesses devastating magic attacks like Silk Cutter and Thunderstorm, but it refuses to cast either spell while its own Tin Knights are standing in the blast radius. As long as its servants remain alive, the Dream Lord limits its own attacks. Realizing this, Elymas focuses entirely on controlling the Tin Knights. After satisfying the cooldown requirement, he activates Disarm a second time, stripping another knight of its weapon. A third knight lunges toward him, only for Elymas to activate Rampart Reflection, causing the knight's own attack to rebound and send it crashing backward. Elymas believes the real battle has finally begun. However, just as one Tin Knight falls, the embryo calmly casts Repair, instantly restoring the knight to full health. Elymas immediately understands the true nature of the fight. As long as the embryo remains alive, every defeated Tin Knight can simply be repaired and revived. Fortunately, using Repair briefly exposes the monster's massive eyeball. Without wasting a second, Elymas throws an earth magic stone directly at it. The crystal shatters into countless earth needles that pierce the exposed eye, dropping the embryo's HP significantly. Since he lacks any true ranged attacks, these enchanted magic stones are the only reliable way he can damage the boss. Enraged, the embryo screams while the Tin Knights once again surround Elymas. By standing inside one knight's shadow, he narrowly avoids the deadly trajectory of the embryo's Silk Cutter attack. He blocks another sword strike, attempts another shield bash, but to his surprise, the Tin Knight dodges the attack entirely. That single movement sends chills down Elymas' spine. The monsters are learning. Unlike the Magic World game he once knew, these enemies are adapting to his fighting style in real time. They've already figured out how Shield Bash works and have begun adjusting their movements accordingly. Thankfully, Elymas had anticipated that possibility, but it drastically increases the difficulty of the battle. To make matters worse, he'll still need 3 more successful Earth Magic Stone hits to finish the embryo before its rapid regeneration restores the damage. Suddenly, the embryo opens its giant eye wider than ever before. Before Elymas can react, it fires Silk Cutter directly through one of its own Tin Knights, sacrificing its servant to catch him completely off guard. The razor-sharp beam tears straight toward him. With no time left to dodge, Elymas desperately raises his shield and braces for impact. The blast overwhelms him. His vision begins fading, his heartbeat races uncontrollably, and his body crashes onto the dungeon floor. His status changes to stunned, leaving him completely unable to move as a Tin Knight slowly approaches, sword raised for the killing blow. As death draws closer, Elymas finally understands why stun is considered one of the deadliest status effects in this world. His body refuses to respond no matter how desperately he tries to stand. Regret fills his mind as he wonders if his naturally terrible luck stat doomed him from the very beginning. Perhaps he should have kept Rouge by his side after all. Just as the Tin Knight swings its blade, Rouge suddenly bursts back into the battlefield. She slices across the Tin Knight, forcing it back before dragging Elymas to safety moments before the sword crashes into the ground where he had been lying. Without hesitation, she creates multiple copies of herself using Doppel illusion, confusing the enemies and buying them precious seconds. A shocked Elymas demands to know why she returned after he ordered her to escape. Fighting back tears, Rouge admits that after escorting the injured adventurers to safety, she realized she couldn't leave without checking on him. She reminds him that he promised he'd escape shortly after them, but when he never appeared, she knew something had gone wrong. Elymas apologizes and begs her to flee while she still can. This time, however, Rouge refuses. With tears streaming down her face, she proudly declares that she has her own pride as an adventurer. Elymas was the one who saved her, believed in her, risked his life for her, and told her she was needed. There was no way she could abandon someone like that simply to save herself. If she were capable of doing such a thing, she says, she would have quit being an adventurer long ago. Her words leave Elymas speechless. Still, Rouge points out one major problem. Their previous strategy won't work anymore because neither of them possesses a proper long-range attack capable of hitting the embryo's exposed eye. For a brief moment, silence fills the battlefield. Then Rouge steps forward and asks him not to give up. She reminds him that he was the one who believed in her even when she had completely given up on herself. She asks him to rely on her one more time. A smile slowly appears across Elymas' face as he finally realizes he has been underestimating her all along. He stands back up, looks directly at Rouge, and tells her exactly what she wanted to hear. He needs her strength. Rouge smiles back without a hint of hesitation. Standing shoulder to shoulder against the Dream Lord and its army of Tin Knights, the two adventurers prepare to face the impossible together. Rouge and Elymas continue fighting side by side against the relentless Tin Knights. After an exhausting battle, the two finally manage to destroy all three of them. However, before they can celebrate, the Dream Lord embryo simply casts its restoration magic once again, reviving every single Tin Knight. Seeing the knights stand back up, Rouge clenches her fists in frustration and says there's no end to this. Elymas keeps his eyes locked on the floating embryo and tells her they have to defeat the Dream Lord itself. Rouge asks if he has a plan, and he nods. Everything depends on her dice thrust. Their entire strategy rests on the 1 in 6 chance of rolling a 6. Rouge immediately points out the obvious problem. The embryo is floating far above the battlefield. Even with acrobatic amble, she can't reach it safely. Elymas shakes his head, explaining that if she jumps toward it normally, she'll become an easy target for its deadly silk cutter attack. Instead, he reveals his desperate plan. He's going to force the embryo into close combat. Rouge must stay directly behind him. Once they're close enough, he'll use Shield Bash to launch her into the air like a human projectile. It's an incredibly dangerous strategy. If anything goes wrong, neither of them is likely to survive. Without a moment's hesitation, Rouge accepts. She swears she'll roll the 6 they need. The final assault begins. Elymas charges straight through the battlefield, carving past a Tin Knight with vital slice before shouting that it's time for Rouge to fly. Rouge rushes forward, plants both feet on Elymas' shield, and the powerful Shield Bash launches her high into the air toward the embryo. Watching her soar upward, Elymas thinks everything has gone perfectly so far. Now the outcome rests entirely in Lady Luck's hands. He remembers how, during their second Golden Rana hunt, it took Rouge 7 attempts before finally rolling a 6. He knows worrying about probability now is meaningless, but with only one chance left, all he can do is pray. Rouge activates Dice Thrust. The magical number spins. Both Elymas and the embryo stare at it in complete silence. It lands. 4. Both of their expressions instantly fall. Rouge's attack completely misses the embryo's weak point. The monster lets out a horrifying laugh, convinced it has already won. Seeing everything collapse before his eyes, Elymas realizes there was never another strategy available. Betting everything on luck was reckless, but every other option had already led to certain death. Even now, He refuses to surrender, desperately searching for another solution. Then, Roosh suddenly activates acrobatic amble once more. Instead of falling helplessly, she uses the nearby wall to spring onto the upper ledge above the embryo. With one final leap, she looks down at the boss and declares this is her last real chance. She activates dice thrust again. The number spins through the air. This time, 6. A guaranteed critical hit. Roosh's blade pierces straight through the embryo's massive eye. The monster lets out one final scream before its HP drops to 0. As the Dream Lord dies, every Tin Knight instantly collapses lifelessly beside it. Victory is finally theirs. The massive experience reward floods in. Roosh jumps from level 31 all the way to level 39, while Elymas rises from level 33 to level 41. Looking at Roosh, Elymas realizes he made one enormous mistake. In the end, the only thing he could do was place his faith in her luck. But even if fate itself had abandoned Roosh, she refused to surrender. Through her own determination, she seized victory with her own hands. Overjoyed, Roosh celebrates that she actually did it. Elymas gently picks up her clown hat, places it back on her head, and sincerely thanks her. Without her returning to save him, he would have died inside that dungeon. Blushing from embarrassment, Roosh admits that exploring this dream hole has completely changed her. Everyone had always mocked her class and called it useless, but during this adventure they found countless rare items, and even her dice thrust proved its worth. Elymas smiles and tells her it wasn't because of luck alone. It was because she was Roosh. Deep down, he realizes he'd been making the same mistake as his father and Klein. He had judged people by their class and level, believing they determined a person's worth. The only difference was that his standards were slightly different. Yet when everything was on the line, Roosh returned to save his life without hesitation. She overturned a hopeless battle in a single instant and defeated the Dream Lord through sheer courage and determination. The grace, honor, and strength she displayed under pressure far surpassed anything that could ever be measured by levels or classes. Flustered by all the praise, Roosh blushes and tells him he's giving her way too much credit. But Elymas quietly thinks there isn't anyone in the world he could trust more than her. As a reward for defeating a Dream Lord with only a two-person party while being far below the dungeon's recommended level, both Elymas and Roosh receive the special title Upsetter. The title grants a 15% boost to both attack and speed whenever they fight enemies with a higher level than themselves. While admiring their new achievement, Roosh notices that the defeated Tin Knights dropped equipment. They discover several tin swords, each worth an astonishing 24 million gold. Elymas can't help but laugh at how absurdly valuable they are, although he admits anyone carrying equipment that expensive would probably become a walking target. Then another thought crosses his mind. If the Tin Knights dropped such incredible loot, then surely the embryo itself must have left behind something even better. He quickly asks Roosh if she sees a wind elemental bow anywhere nearby. She searches the battlefield but instead discovers something far more valuable. A skill book. Elymas' eyes widen the moment he reads its title. Intermediate Wind Magic. Worth an incredible 20 million gold, the book unlocks the Intermediate Wind Magic skill tree, granting access to powerful wind blades, devastating lightning spells, and even Tailwind, a movement speed enhancement skill. Completely stunned, Elymas tells Roosh to hide the book immediately. An item this valuable could easily get them killed if the wrong people discovered they possessed it. Before either of them can say another word, the entire dungeon begins shaking violently. Roosh panics, but Elymas calmly explains that the tremors simply mean the dream hole is collapsing now that its Dream Lord has been defeated. Soon, they'll be safely returned outside. Relieved, Roosh lets out a long sigh. Elymas then casually mentions one final detail. Between the skill book, 2 dazzling Rana decorative blades, 2 tin swords, the bear shields, multiple magic stones, and every other valuable drop they collected throughout the expedition, they've earned a grand total of 63,840,000 gold. The moment Roosh hears the final amount, her legs immediately give out beneath her once again. Elymas quickly rushes over in concern, asking if she's all right. Barely conscious from the overwhelming shock, Roosh weakly mutters that he really shouldn't have told her the total. While wandering, Klein grumbled that their luck had completely disappeared ever since Roosh left the party. He complained that they had defeated 4 Matango monsters in a row without receiving a single drop, something that should have been almost impossible. Reese hesitantly wondered if Roosh's Lady Luck skill had actually been carrying them all along. Klein immediately dismissed the idea, insisting they had simply been unlucky that day. Then he bitterly reminded her how Roosh had tried to ask for a share of the blood-soaked sword's profits. Reese cautiously suggested asking Roosh to return, but Klein's pride refused to allow it. He declared there was no way he would ever bow his head after insulting her so badly. He would rather die than apologize and invite her back. Meanwhile, at the Adventurers Guild, rumors spread like wildfire. Adventurers couldn't believe that a newly promoted E-rank adventurer and an F-rank adventurer had supposedly conquered Angel's Playbox, a dungeon with a recommended level of 50. Standing before the receptionist, Elymas calmly explained that they hadn't entered intending to defeat the dungeon at all. They had simply been caught in a wandering when the Dream Lord attacked. If necessary, the two rescued adventurers could verify every word of his story. The receptionist nodded and explained that the guild would investigate before awarding the city's conquest bounty. The narration explained that towns often posted enormous rewards for clearing dangerous dream holes. The longer a dream hole remained active, the more powerful its monsters became, increasing the likelihood of monster disasters around nearby settlements. Many scholars had proposed theories explaining why some dream holes were far stronger than others, ranging from mana flowing beneath the land to mysterious influences from sleeping gods, but none had ever been proven. Because of these dangers, powerful adventurers usually based themselves near cities plagued by dangerous dream holes, protecting the surrounding region while earning enormous rewards. Unfortunately for the city of Rondolm, nobody had ever managed to conquer Angel's Playbox. Fearing the dungeon would continue growing stronger, the city's ruler had placed an enormous bounty on its destruction. Hearing this, Elymas smiled in surprise. He hadn't even realized there was a reward for clearing the dungeon. When he asked how much they would receive, the receptionist answered with a single number: 10 million gold. Even Klein nearly fell over after hearing that amount. Elymas accepted the reward with a smile, while Roosh admitted something funny had happened to them. After obtaining loot worth tens of millions of gold inside the dungeon, hearing about a 10 million gold reward somehow didn't feel nearly as shocking anymore. Klein, however, finally connected the dots. Lady Luck. The moment Elymas discovered Roosh possessed that skill tree, he had immediately recruited her, and now the two of them had become unbelievably rich. Watching them casually treat 10 million gold as if it were ordinary made Klein realize they must have earned an absurd fortune inside the dungeon. The receptionist then announced another surprise. Both Elymas and Roosh were being promoted to D-rank adventurers for defeating Angel's Playbox. Roosh had even skipped E-rank entirely. Klein stood frozen. She had already become an adventurer completely beyond his reach. Unable to hold back any longer, he rushed toward Roosh, bowed his head deeply, and begged her to return. He apologized repeatedly, promising to split the blood-soaked sword reward equally if only she would rejoin the party. Both Roosh and Elymas stared at him in complete silence. Ignoring Klein's desperate pleas, Elymas quietly told Roosh they still had plenty of time before the guild finished its investigation, suggesting they leave. Klein continued shouting after them, desperately begging for another chance, while Reese simply watched in disgust. Later, the two sat together inside a luxurious restaurant to celebrate. Elymas reflected that their promotion to D-rank came with an unexpected benefit. They could now carry up to 45 skill points at once, bringing him one step closer to finally obtaining the legendary Fong of Smoldering Insanity skill tree. With that dream finally within reach, it was already time to begin planning their next source of income. Lost in thought, he accidentally ignored Roosh. She pouted before reminding him they were supposed to be celebrating. She happily flipped through the menu, recalling how she had always dreamed of visiting this famous restaurant with her party after becoming a successful adventurer. Back then, she had imagined celebrating alongside Klein and Reese. Then her eyes landed on the royal crab pie with black mushroom sauce. It cost 8,000 gold. Her expression instantly changed. Laughing awkwardly, she suggested they pretend they had never seen it and look for meals costing 4,000 gold or less instead. Without hesitation, Elymas called the waiter over. He ordered the royal crab pie anyway. Watching Roosh's stunned reaction, Elymas realized something. Despite everything they had accomplished, she still hadn't accepted just how wealthy they had become. Once their food arrived, Elymas brought up a more important matter: the rewards. He first asked whether Roosh intended to keep the intermediate wind magic skill book. It would be an incredible upgrade for her. To his surprise, she immediately refused. She asked why he wasn't using it himself. Elymas explained that he already had his sights set on an even stronger skill tree, making the book unnecessary for him. Ruche smiled softly before shaking her head. If using that skill book meant changing her future path, then she didn't want it. More importantly, she didn't want to become strong only to end up leaving Elymas' party so soon. She wanted to continue growing alongside him. Hearing that, Elymas decided they would simply sell the skill book instead. After calculating everything they had earned, he revealed that their total profit came to roughly 57 million gold. Since he had originally promised an 80-20 split, he calmly announced that Ruche would receive 46 million gold, while he would keep only 11 million. The entire restaurant seemed to freeze. Ruche suddenly shot to her feet. She couldn't believe he was still serious about that ridiculous agreement. At first Elymas assumed she wanted an even larger share, but she quickly shook her head. That wasn't it at all. She refused to accept such an unfair split. Everything she had accomplished was because Elymas believed in her when nobody else did, rescued her, trained her, and helped her become stronger. There was no way she could accept nearly all of the reward while he took so little. Elymas quietly insisted he thought the arrangement was perfectly reasonable. But judging by the look on Ruche's face, the argument was only just beginning. In the end, Elymas and Ruche couldn't agree on how to split their rewards, so they decided to postpone the discussion and visit the Hall of Broken Grimoires to sell some of the treasure they had collected. As soon as they stepped inside, the old witch greeted them with a grin, teasing Elymas about finally bringing an adorable party member with him. Ruche curiously looked around the mysterious shop while Elymas got straight to the point, asking if the item he wanted was still available. The witch laughed, assuring him that she still had it and reminding him that trust was everything in her business. Ruche, confused by their conversation, wondered if this was the place that held the item Elymas had been searching for. The witch smirked, commenting that it was strange to see someone willingly seeking such a troublesome skill. Elymas quickly clarified that the skill wasn't for Ruche, it was for himself. Rather than wasting more time, he placed every valuable item they had obtained from the dungeon onto the counter. The witch's expression immediately changed. She stared at the pile of treasure before her, especially the two dazzling Rana decorative blades. She admitted she hadn't expected adventurers of their level to bring back such priceless loot. Elymas wasted no time making his offer, demanding 30 million gold for the pair and making it clear he would simply sell them elsewhere if she offered any less. Naturally, the old merchant wasn't willing to accept that price so easily. She claimed 30 million was far too high and countered with 25 million instead. Ruche innocently remarked that the shopkeeper seemed to have a point, but Elymas immediately warned her not to fall for the witch's bargaining tactics. He knew exactly how experienced merchants worked. The witch, however, fired back by telling Ruche never to show weakness during negotiations because people would exploit kindness without hesitation. Even though Elymas knew other shops wouldn't offer nearly as much, he refused to budge. He calmly explained that he wasn't desperate for money since they had already earned plenty from their magic stones and conquest rewards. If necessary, he could simply keep the valuable swords until the market price rose even higher. The witch could tell he wasn't bluffing. Then Elymas revealed the real reason for today's visit. He pulled out the rare intermediate wind magic skill book that had dropped from the Dream Lord and asked for her appraisal. The old witch's eyes widened in genuine surprise. She admitted that obtaining such a valuable skill book so early in their careers was almost unbelievable and even predicted that Elymas and Ruche might become heroes before long. Despite praising them, she immediately tried to drive the price down. She claimed that although the guild might pay around 20 million gold, she herself could only offer 14 million because selling such an expensive item carried significant risk. Elymas instantly saw through her strategy. He pointed out that intermediate wind magic would always have eager buyers and argued that purchasing it for 22 million would be a worthwhile investment considering the fortune he intended to bring her in the future. The shop erupted into another heated negotiation. The witch accused Elymas of getting greedy, while Elymas shot back that she was just as greedy herself. Ruche could only watch as the two merchants argued back and forth without either side giving an inch. Trying to end the endless haggling, Ruche suddenly looked at the mysterious skill book Elymas wanted and asked how much it cost. The witch explained that the Fong of Smoothing and Sanding had originally been worth 55 million gold and still sold for around 30 million today. Hearing that staggering price made Ruche realize why Elymas had been so determined to negotiate. Then inspiration struck her. Instead of selling everything separately, Ruche proposed trading the intermediate wind magic skill book together with the two dazzling swords directly for the Fong of Smoothing and Sanding. At first the witch dismissed the idea completely, calling it a ridiculous suggestion. But after thinking it over, she realized that several valuable items would actually be much easier to sell than one obscure skill book nobody wanted to buy. The deal suddenly became far more attractive. Elymas immediately recognized just how incredible Rush's proposal really was. If the trade went through, he would obtain the priceless skill book he wanted while they would still keep all the gold earned from the dungeon's conquest reward and the magic stone sales. The old witch finally smiled and admitted that perhaps investing in two promising young adventurers wasn't such a bad idea after all. She agreed to the exchange. Rush beamed with excitement, but Elymas immediately objected. Without selling the items for cash first, he wouldn't be able to give Rush her rightful share of the profits. Rush simply smiled and told him she didn't mind. She wanted to consider it her gift to thank him for everything he had done for her. Elymas couldn't accept that so easily. He insisted the amount involved was far too large to simply call a gift, and he even reminded her that nobody knew what the future held. Their party might one day split apart, leaving her with nothing. Rush gently grabbed his hand and smiled with complete confidence. If that ever happened, then there would be something to worry about. But since she had no intention of leaving his party, there was no reason to think about such things now. Before Elymas could argue any further, Rush cheerfully accepted the witch's offer on both of their behalf, urging the shopkeeper to finish the trade before Elymas changed his mind again. The old witch burst into laughter, praising Rush for being the only person capable of keeping the stubborn heavy knight under control. As the two women happily finalized the exchange together, Elymas could only stand there speechless, wondering how they had somehow become friends so quickly while completely leaving him out of the conversation. Meanwhile, inside a dark prison, countless slaves sat chained behind iron bars, completely unaware that their final moments had arrived. Without warning, the massive doors creaked open, and Malice calmly stepped inside with a sword in her hand. A chilling smile spread across her face as she walked through the prison, mercilessly cutting down every prisoner one after another. Their screams echoed through the halls, but she didn't hesitate for even a second. Blood soaked the floor as she continued her massacre without the slightest trace of remorse. Just as the slaughter came to an end, the family's butler hurried inside and respectfully informed her that the life force transfer ritual had finally been completed. Hearing those words, Malice looked at the sea of corpses with satisfaction. She believed that by bathing her soul in blood, she would continue growing stronger. Thinking of Elymas, she quietly smiled to herself. Exiled or not, she had always known from childhood that he wasn't the type of person who would simply break under pressure. That was exactly why she intended to corner him little by little until he had nowhere left to run. Wearing an unsettling smile, she softly whispered that her precious little Elymas would soon have nowhere to escape. Elsewhere, inside the Adventurers Guild, rumors about Elymas' recent accomplishments had finally reached his family's ears. Count Asia's, Elymas' father, listened with a cold expression as one of his attendants explained that an adventurer resembling Elymas had been achieving extraordinary feats throughout the city. Without a moment's hesitation, the Count assumed his disgraced son had been abusing the prestigious Avegon family name to gain influence within the guild. The family butler, however, respectfully disagreed. Having watched Elymas grow up, he insisted that the young man had always been wise and honest. He simply couldn't believe Elymas would ever misuse the family's reputation. The Count reluctantly agreed to have the matter investigated, but he made his intentions perfectly clear. If Elymas truly had been using the Avegon name, he would personally see to it that his son was expelled from the Adventurers Guild and permanently banned from registering again. Should such disrespect happen another time, he even declared that Elymas' life would no longer be spared. At that very moment, someone knocked on the office door. It was Malice. The Count warmly welcomed her, even telling her to stop acting so formal. Since she was now considered the future head of the household, she no longer needed to call him master and could address him as father instead. Malice revealed that she had overheard the entire conversation. However, unlike the Count, she believed his punishment toward Elymas had been far too lenient. In her eyes, exile alone wasn't enough. Now that Elymas had lost his livelihood, desperation might eventually drive him into becoming a bandit or criminal, staining the Avegon family's reputation forever. The Count nodded in agreement and asked what she proposed. With a calm smile, Malice suggested that the two of them personally visit the city and observe Elymas with their own eyes. Only then could they decide what punishment he truly deserved. Meanwhile, completely unaware that danger was approaching, Elymas and Rush walked peacefully through the streets of Rondom. Almas couldn't stop smiling as he looked at the Fong of Smoldering Insanity skill book he had finally obtained. Roosh reminded him that she had already agreed to trade for it, so there was no reason to feel guilty anymore. Almas still couldn't shake the feeling that she had sacrificed too much for him, but Roosh simply laughed and reminded him that he had also bought her iron piercer without hesitation. Almas explained that purchasing the dagger had been an investment because he knew it would help defeat the Golden Rana and eventually pay for itself. Curious, Roosh asked whether this terrifying new skill tree would really be worth such an enormous investment. Without the slightest hesitation, Almas declared that it absolutely would. According to his knowledge from the game, the Fong of Smoldering Insanity was one of the strongest skill trees in existence. It granted terrifying abilities to those willing to throw away their own lives in battle. Combined with the Heavy Knight class, it could push a person's strength to completely absurd heights. Unable to contain his excitement any longer, Almas immediately absorbed the skill book. The ancient magic dissolved into countless streams of light before flowing directly into his body. Moments later, a brand new skill tree appeared within his status window. He had finally obtained the Fong of Smoldering Insanity. Overjoyed, Almas proudly showed his updated status to Roosh before realizing he had just broken the very rule he had taught her about never revealing personal stats so casually. Roosh couldn't help smiling at the irony, although she admitted she was genuinely happy that he had finally achieved his goal. Despite unlocking the new skill tree, Almas decided not to invest his skill points yet. He still wanted to continue strengthening his Heavy Knight abilities first before moving deeper into the new branch. As they continued discussing their next destination, Roosh suggested visiting another dream hole to hunt for more rare equipment. Almas quickly corrected her, explaining that adventurers shouldn't enter dangerous dungeons solely for valuable drops. Before he could finish his sentence, the entrance to the guild slammed open with a loud crash. Everyone turned toward the doorway. Standing there were Count Asias and Malice. The guild master immediately recognized the count and rushed forward to greet the powerful noble. Curious about the unexpected visit, he politely offered to escort him to a private meeting room. Instead, the count coldly ordered everyone to clear the guild immediately. The guild master hesitated for only a moment before seeing the count's intimidating glare. Without daring to argue further, he ordered every adventurer and employee to leave the building. As Almas quietly suggested that he and Roosh should leave as well to avoid unnecessary attention, they began walking toward the exit. But before they could leave, the count's commanding voice stopped them. He ordered only 2 people to remain: Almas and Roosh. Roosh immediately froze in place. Her face turned pale as panic rushed through her mind. She had heard countless stories about the fearsome Count Asias and the prestigious Avegon family. Facing such an overwhelming noble made her knees feel weak. Sensing her fear, Almas calmly reassured her. There was no need to worry. After all, it seemed the people his father had come to see weren't after her. They had come for him. After making a fortune and earning a new skill tree, Almas never expected his next challenge to be his own family. The moment Count Asias and Malice storm into the guild, the atmosphere turns ice cold. While Rouge trembles before the overwhelming pressure of the nobles, Almas refuses to bow his head. His father accuses him of disgracing the family name, but Almas calmly denies every allegation and demands to know why they have really come. Instead of backing down, he throws out a challenge that shocks everyone. If he can defeat Malice in a duel, his father must promise to stay out of his life forever. The guild is quickly cleared, leaving only the spectators to witness the clash between the exiled Heavy Knight and the family's greatest prodigy. Count Asias mocks the idea that a Heavy Knight could ever stand against a master swordsman, while Malice accepts the duel with an unsettling smile. She admits that this will be the last time she gets to play with the boy she once adored, before promising to carve him apart piece by piece. The instant the fight begins, she vanishes in a blur of speed, launching a relentless barrage of sword strikes that forces Almas completely onto the defensive. Rouge can only watch in horror as Malice overwhelms him with terrifying speed. Every slash pushes him closer to defeat, while Count Asias watches with complete confidence, convinced his daughter is merely toying with the useless son he cast aside. Almas blocks strike after strike with his shield, refusing to panic even as his health plummets. Then, just as Malice grows overconfident, her body suddenly freezes for a split second. Almas instantly seizes the opportunity, landing a perfectly timed vital slash that sends her stumbling backward. For the first time, the impossible happens. Malice is actually wounded. Although the crowd is stunned, Elymas knows that trick will never work twice. The only reason he managed to connect was because of the upsetter title, whose bonus speed finally allowed him to keep up with an opponent stronger than himself. Furious that a heavy knight dared to touch her, Malice unleashes her true power. She activates the terrifying Steel Cutter Fist, a master swordsman technique so fast that she completely disappears from sight before reappearing directly in front of Elymas. He barely survives the first strike, but the second tears through his defenses, leaving blood pouring from his mouth as Rouge desperately begs him to surrender. Kneeling on the ground with his health nearly depleted, Elymas calmly reveals that everything has gone exactly according to plan. Every hit Malice landed served a purpose. He wanted to measure the strength of her signature technique, identify the weakness hidden within her style, and most importantly, allow his health to fall below the threshold required for his ultimate strategy. While everyone assumes he has reached his limit, Elymas silently pours his newly earned skill points into the Fong of Smoldering Insanity skill tree, unlocking one of the most terrifying abilities in the entire game. Without hesitation, Elymas activates Life Shield, sacrificing the last portion of his own health until only 18% remains. Even Count Azaz believes this proves his son has completely lost his mind. But the moment his HP falls low enough, the battlefield erupts with overwhelming energy as the legendary Dragon Rage Death Cage awakens. A massive dragon-shaped aura materializes behind Elymas, its presence alone sending chills down Malice's spine. Tightening his grip on his weapon, Elymas stares directly at her and declares that he is about to reveal the true power of the Heavy Knight class. Elymas activates the terrifying Dragon Rage Death Cage, and the overwhelming aura immediately catches Malice's attention. Pointing her sword straight at him, she scoffs, convinced that no skill could ever rival the strength of a master swordsman. But before she can finish mocking him, Elymas explodes forward with unbelievable speed. Their blades collide in a violent clash, and Malice is left stunned as she struggles to block the attack. She can't believe what she's feeling. Somehow, Elymas' speed and raw strength have risen to match her own. Elymas explains that the combination of Dragon Rage Death Cage and the Upsetter title has boosted both his attack and speed by an incredible 115%, completely erasing the overwhelming stat gap that had separated them moments ago. The duel instantly transforms into a breathtaking exchange of sword strikes as steel crashes against steel over and over again. Instead of panicking, Malice bursts into laughter, delighted that the younger brother she once admired has finally become interesting enough to entertain her. She begins talking about an old fable where humanity is inevitably crushed by forces beyond their understanding, confessing that she loves stories where desperate struggles always end in tragedy. To her, Elymas was once someone worthy of admiration, making it all the more satisfying to personally witness his downfall. But Elymas calmly rejects her twisted fantasy, declaring that this battle will not end the way she imagines. Malice launches another relentless assault, claiming that his beloved parry technique will always remain inferior to her swordsmanship. This time, however, Elymas surprises her by activating Flowing Waters, perfectly shifting his body the instant her blade should have landed. For the first time in the duel, Malice finds herself being forced onto the defensive. She can't believe she's the one being cornered, especially after dominating the fight only moments ago. Elymas points out the obvious truth. Since she failed to completely overwhelm him while she still possessed the advantage in raw stats, the battle has now shifted entirely in his favor. Desperate to reclaim control, Malice unleashes Cold Steel Cutter once again, her signature technique capable of cutting through nearly any defense. Yet Elymas calmly blocks every slash with flawless precision. Strike after strike crashes harmlessly against his shield, frustrating her even further. Then Elymas exposes the fatal flaw hidden within her greatest technique. Cold Steel Cutter dramatically boosts her physical abilities, but only for a brief instant. A true master should finish the battle within the first few strikes before its weakness can be exploited. By dragging the duel out, she has unknowingly handed him the perfect opportunity to counter. Realizing her advantage has disappeared, Malice throws away all composure. Her sword is knocked flying after another perfectly timed parry, landing directly in front of Count Azaz himself. Furious and humiliated, she abandons technique entirely and lunges forward with a desperate punch. But Elymas had already predicted exactly how she would react. Her reckless attack crashes into his shield, allowing him to immediately unleash Shield Bash. The impact sends Malice flying across the arena before she crashes heavily onto the ground, completely unconscious. For a few seconds, absolute silence fills the battlefield. Then Rouge finally rushes forward, throwing her arms around Elymas in relief. She confesses that she had believed in him until the very end, but Malice's bloodthirsty attacks terrified her the entire time. Smiling softly, Elymas reassures her that this victory only became possible because she believed in him when no one else did. Rouge blushes at the compliment before nervously asking whether Malice is dead. Elymas calmly explains that she merely lost consciousness. Count Azaz walks over to his defeated daughter in complete disbelief. A heavy knight had just defeated a master swordsman before his own eyes. With no room left to deny reality, Elymas reminds his father of the promise he made before the duel. True to his word, Count Azaz acknowledges that there was never any evidence linking Elymas to the accusations against him and agrees to honor their deal. Lifting Malice's unconscious body into his arms, he silently turns to leave. Watching his father's back disappear, Elymas recalls the lessons he was taught as a child. Nobles should never grovel before commoners, never display unnecessary anger, and always preserve their dignity to protect both their land and their people. Despite everything that happened between them, Elymas realizes those words still remain deeply engraved in his heart. Quietly, he thanks his father for raising him, even if the man himself never hears the gratitude. Before Count Azaz can leave the guild, Rouge suddenly calls out to him. She boldly insists that he should apologize to Elymas after falsely accusing him and treating him so cruelly. Elymas tries to stop her, understanding that his father could never openly lower himself due to his position. After a long pause, Count Azaz finally opens the door and speaks just one sentence. He tells Rouge to take good care of Elymas before walking away without another word. Both Elymas and Rouge stand frozen in shock. It isn't an apology, but for Count Azaz, those few words are the closest thing to one. The following day, after recovering at an inn, Elymas and Rouge leave their hometown behind. Riding together in a carriage, Rouge asks if he's truly satisfied with how things ended. Elymas admits his father probably did the best he could while preserving his dignity as a noble. Then he jokingly points out that telling Rouge to take care of him might actually mean his father accepted her as well. Rouge instantly blushes, unable to hide her happiness. Their journey eventually brings them to the legendary city of adventurers, Laconia. Standing before its enormous gates, Rouge is left speechless by its sheer size. Elymas explains that the dream holes surrounding Laconia are far more dangerous than those near ordinary cities, making it the ultimate destination for talented mid-level adventurers seeking fame and fortune. Having finally cleared the beginner stages of their adventure, Elymas decides their next goal is to make another massive leap in strength. Before setting out again, Rouge asks Elymas to help her distribute her newly earned skill points. She confidently declares that she wants to become the strongest version of herself, no matter what path it takes. After carefully considering her options, Elymas recommends building her into a critical inflictor by investing heavily into her Lady Luck skill. Without even hesitating, Rouge follows his advice, causing her cat's paw skill to evolve into Angel of Blessing. Excited by her newfound power, she vows to become the strongest critical attacker possible. Elymas then reveals the next piece of the puzzle. To truly complete Rouge's build, she'll eventually need an incredibly rare skill book known as Grim Reaper Grip. Unfortunately, acquiring it won't be cheap. They will likely need several 100 million gold before they can even think about buying it. The moment Rouge hears that unbelievable number, her entire body freezes. Her legs begin trembling as she quietly suggests that maybe becoming a different type of adventurer wouldn't be such a bad idea after all. After arriving in the city of Akroina to gather information, Elymas and Rouge make their way deep into the nearby forest, where the famous Dream Hall awaits. Since they plan to take full advantage of Rouge's Lady Luck skill to gather powerful equipment, Elymas believes there is no better hunting ground than this dungeon. Confident in their preparation, the two step inside, ready to search for valuable black steel gear. As they enter the Dream Hall, Rouge immediately notices that the dungeon's recommended level is surprisingly high. Elymas reassures her that the recommendation mainly applies to the Dream Lord, the dungeon's boss, rather than the ordinary monsters roaming the halls. Their real targets are creatures known as Smileys. Although these monsters are only around level 45, they are famous for dropping black steel equipment, a type of gear considered the standard for strong mid-level adventurers. Not only does black steel equipment provide excellent stats, but it also sells for an enormous amount of money, making it one of the most desirable drops in the dungeon. While exploring, Rouge once again finds herself amazed by how much knowledge Elymas possesses. Whether it's classes, dungeons, or monsters, he seems to know almost everything. Elymas explains that this knowledge wasn't something he chose to learn. It had been drilled into him throughout his childhood as part of his education as a noble. Although Rush apologizes for bringing up unpleasant memories, Elymas simply smiles and tells her that thanks to her, he was finally able to leave the Advergon household behind and begin living the peaceful life he wanted. Inside, however, he knows the real reason for his knowledge comes from memories of his previous life, something he could never reveal to anyone. As they continue walking, Rush suggests that with so much knowledge, Elymas could easily become a guild consultant specializing in skills. The thought suddenly terrifies her because if he accepted such a position, he might no longer need her as his partner. Panicking, she grabs his hand and asks him to keep adventuring with her just a little longer, promising that she'll work even harder from now on. Seeing her sincerity, Elymas immediately reassures her that he has no intention of leaving. Adventuring alongside her is exactly what he wants, and his answer brings a huge smile to Rush's face. Their conversation is interrupted when a smiley finally appears. The strange monster resembles a giant rock with a smiling face carved into it. Even though it shares the same level as Malice, Elymas explains that comparing a human swordsman to a simple monster is meaningless. Unlike skilled fighters, smileys rely almost entirely on charging attacks and possess very little intelligence. As the monster rolls toward them, Elymas charges first, intercepting its tackle with his shield before it can accelerate using its speed-up ability. Although the impact pushes him backward, he quickly recovers, closes the distance again, and uses Shadow Stomp to pin the monster in place. Unable to build momentum, the smiley loses its greatest advantage. Elymas follows up with another attack, reducing the monster's damage output to almost nothing before leaving the rest to Rush. With the monster completely under control, Rush rushes in and unleashes a series of quick slashes. Every strike chips away at the smiley until it finally crumbles into pieces. The victory grants both experience points, allowing Elymas to jump from level 41 to level 43. Pleased with how smoothly the battle went, he praises Rush's performance and even suggests they might be capable of challenging the Dream Lord someday. Their first reward exceeds expectations. Alongside an earth magic stone, the monster drops a black steel knife worth 4.3 million gold. Even Elymas is surprised by how quickly Rush's Lady Luck skill has produced such a valuable item. For Rush, however, the enormous price tag is almost more frightening than exciting, and she insists they handle the weapon with extreme care. Since she now has a proper weapon, the pair decides to continue hunting smileys while carefully managing their health and supplies. Although Rush worries that the previous battle wasn't as easy for Elymas as he made it look, he laughs it off. Compared to everything they experienced against the Embryo and Malice, fighting smileys feels almost like repetitive factory work. More importantly, he wants to earn as much money as possible because, in his eyes, gold is the key to becoming stronger. Rush jokingly wonders if he's beginning to care more about money than strength itself, leaving Elymas momentarily speechless before he quickly changes the subject. Before they can continue, several more smileys suddenly appear at once. A smiley horde is an extremely rare encounter, and while Rush immediately suggests retreating, Elymas calmly refuses. Since these monsters rely on speed up to strengthen their charges, allowing them to build momentum would only make things more dangerous. Fighting them head-on is actually the safer strategy. Besides, he welcomes the opportunity to gain more experience and valuable equipment. As he studies the group, Elymas notices something unusual. Among the smiling monsters is a single creature wearing a sad expression. He immediately recognizes it as the incredibly rare Frowny. Realizing that such an uncommon monster only appeared because of Rush's Lady Luck skill, he thanks her, although she mistakenly believes she's somehow responsible for creating the dangerous horde. Without wasting another second, Elymas orders Rush to focus exclusively on the Frowny while he keeps the smileys occupied. He dives straight into the group, skillfully blocking and redirecting every charging attack with his shield. At one point, he launches a smiley into the air with Shield Bash, perfectly setting up Rush, who leaps in and lands a devastating critical hit with Die Thrust, instantly eliminating the Frowny. The moment their leader falls, the remaining smileys lose all coordination. Instead of attacking intelligently, they simply roll around like mindless pinballs. Taking advantage of the chaos, Elymas effortlessly manipulates their attacks, causing them to collide with each other while Rush cuts them down one after another. When the final surviving smiley tries to flee, Elymas traps it with Shadow Storm before Rush finishes it off, bringing the battle to a decisive end. Their incredible victory rewards them with another massive haul of treasure. Alongside a valuable black steel ingot, they obtain both a black steel hammer and a black steel sword, completing nearly every weapon they had hoped to collect. Rush excitedly celebrates how successful their expedition has become, but Almas' attention is immediately drawn to one final drop unlike anything they've seen before. The mysterious object resembles a magic stone, yet Almas instantly recognizes that it is something far rarer, a rune. He explains that runes can be embedded into weapons by skilled blacksmiths, permanently enhancing their abilities. Since most weapons can only hold a single rune, these items are extraordinarily valuable. The one they found increases a weapon's attack power by 30% and alone is worth an astonishing 20 million gold. Even Almas can hardly believe their luck. Finding a rune at their current level is almost unheard of, while Rush becomes so nervous about its value that she immediately wants to lock it safely inside their magic bag before either of them accidentally loses it. After totaling everything they've earned so far, the pair realizes they've already collected equipment and treasure worth an incredible 41.5 million gold. Surprisingly, Rush is almost more shocked by how calmly she's taking such an absurd amount of money. Even so, Almas isn't satisfied yet. They still need a few more smileys to reach the goal he originally set for this expedition. Although they now possess enough black steel equipment for their current level, he knows they'll need even more money in the future if they ever come across the legendary Grim Reaper Grip skillbook. Just as they prepare to continue their hunt, the peaceful atmosphere suddenly shatters. A deafening boom echoes through the dream hall. Both Almas and Rush stop in their tracks as the sound grows louder with every passing second, signaling that something enormous is approaching them from deeper within the dungeon. Just as Almas and Rush prepare to continue hunting, a series of deafening booms echoes throughout the dream hole. The ground trembles with every step, leaving Rush wondering if some kind of giant smiley is approaching. Almas immediately dismisses that idea, knowing no such monster exists. He quickly begins analyzing the situation in his mind. Since the town hasn't issued a bounty for the Dream Lord yet, there shouldn't be any adventurers inside who accidentally provoked a wandering boss. Besides, the Dream Lord itself doesn't make thunderous footsteps like these. Then it finally clicks. The sound can only belong to one monster, the legendary Mithril Golem. Massive rocky footsteps continue drawing closer, confirming Almas' suspicion. He explains that the Mithril Golem is the Dream Hole's ultra-rare monster, something far rarer than even a Frowny. Defeating it comes with an incredible reward because it can drop mithril, one of the most valuable crafting materials in existence. Weapons forged from mithril completely surpass anything made from black steel, making them the dream equipment of countless adventurers. However, that unbelievable reward comes with an equally terrifying risk. Almas warns Rush that the Mithril Golem is overwhelmingly powerful. Even someone with his defensive abilities wouldn't survive a direct hit from it. In his previous life playing Magic World, he had seen countless experienced players get wiped out after greedily challenging the monster for its rare drops despite the pitiful amount of experience it rewarded. Back then, failure only meant respawning. In this world, death would be permanent. Faced with that reality, Almas carefully weighs his options. Retreating would undoubtedly be the safest decision. If the golem caught them while they were already fighting other monsters, escape would become nearly impossible. Still, he can't deny how badly he wants mithril. The thought of obtaining equipment far stronger than black steel is almost impossible to resist. Before he can decide, Rush makes the decision for both of them. Although she's terrified, she reminds Almas that she's an adventurer first. If he's honestly considering fighting it, then she believes they have a real chance to win. Besides, she's convinced her Lady Luck skill is probably the reason the Mithril Golem appeared in the first place. Hearing her confidence reignites Almas' own determination. Since neither of them wants to back down, they commit themselves to bringing the legendary monster down. Instead of rushing in recklessly, Almas immediately begins searching for favorable terrain. Rush wonders why they're spending time choosing a battlefield, but Almas explains that terrain can completely change the outcome of a fight. Remembering previous boss battles, he carefully evaluates the width of the cave, the height of the ceiling, and the stability of the ground before finally finding the perfect location. Fighting inside a narrow passage will severely restrict the golem's movements while giving them much more control over the battle. Once everything is ready, Almas reviews the monster's abilities. The Mithril Golem is level 55 with monstrous attack and defense stats. To make matters even worse, it possesses auto-recovery, allowing it to regenerate health over time. Slowly wearing it down isn't an option. Their only realistic strategy is for Rush to repeatedly land critical hits with die thrust. Even knowing how difficult that will be, they prepare themselves as the gigantic monster finally arrives. The enormous golem squeezes into the cave, roaring as it steps toward them. Without hesitation, Elymas charges first, declaring that they'll rip the mithril straight out of its body. The battle begins instantly as the golem throws a devastating punch. Elymas meets it head-on, blocking the attack with both his shield and a perfectly timed parry. The sheer force launches him backward, yet he somehow lands on his feet. Even so, the difference between the real monster and the one he remembered from the game is overwhelming. Its presence alone is enough to make him hesitate. Normally, he would repeatedly weaken an opponent using disarm, but against something this powerful, he realizes that strategy simply isn't realistic. Fortunately, his true objective isn't dealing damage. While the golem focuses entirely on him, Ruche slips behind the monster and prepares her strongest attack. Just before she can strike, however, the golem unexpectedly swings one massive arm backward. She narrowly avoids the blow, escaping by only a fraction of a second. Realizing brute force won't work, Elymas takes advantage of the cramped cave. Although the mithril golem possesses incredible power, the narrow passage prevents it from using its full range of movement. Carefully redirecting another punch with a parry, he forces the monster to smash directly into the cave wall before charging forward with Shield Bash. Shield Bash compares the combined attack and defense values of both combatants. Statistically, Elymas has no chance of overpowering the golem, but the skill still creates enough impact to knock himself backward and briefly throw the monster off balance. That tiny opening is all Ruche needs. She rushes in from behind and drives her blade deep into the monster with a perfectly executed critical die thrust. The massive hit immediately cuts the golem's health in half. The enraged monster roars and reaches for Ruche, but she skillfully dodges while Elymas praises her excellent timing. They only need one more critical hit to finish the battle. Before the golem can recover, Elymas traps it with Shadow Storm, pinning it in place. Even though the monster struggles against the binding skill, Elymas reinforces the technique by driving his sword into the ground, desperately trying to hold it still. Unfortunately, maintaining the restraint forces him to remain directly in front of the furious monster, making himself its primary target once again. The golem breaks free and immediately attacks. Elymas narrowly avoids another devastating strike before trapping it with Shadow Storm for a second time. This time, the monster loses its footing and crashes onto the ground. Seeing the perfect opportunity, Elymas shouts for Ruche to finish it. She activates Die Thrust once again. But the dice roll isn't high enough. The attack misses. Before she can recover, the golem lashes out again. Although she avoids the counterattack, panic immediately sets in. Missing at such a critical moment feels almost unbelievable. Elymas knows the situation has become extremely dangerous. If the golem manages to stand back up, he won't be able to knock it down a second time. Worse still, once auto-recovery activates, even another critical hit may no longer be enough to defeat it. Their chance of victory is rapidly slipping away. Refusing to surrender, Elymas forces his exhausted body to keep fighting. He activates Life Shield, sacrificing his own health to continue protecting Ruche. Throwing himself directly into danger, he repeatedly uses Shadow Storm and Shield Bash until the golem finally stumbles backward once more. He desperately tells Ruche to attack again. She activates Die Thrust. Another poor roll. Another miss. Unable to believe her terrible luck, Ruche nearly loses confidence, but Elymas immediately shouts for her to stay focused and keep trying. Even as his body reaches its limit, he continues parrying every attack he possibly can. Eventually, the inevitable happens. His arms can no longer withstand the impact. The golem's massive fist crashes into his shield, launching him violently into the cave wall. As he collapses, Elymas realizes he has nothing left. Watching the monster raise its fist for the finishing blow, he quietly accepts that this might truly be the end. At that exact moment, Ruche appears behind the mithril golem. Activating Die Thrust one final time, she finally lands the critical hit they had been desperately waiting for. Her blade pierces straight through the monster, bringing the legendary mithril golem crashing to the ground. Victory finally belongs to them. The battle rewards both adventurers with a massive amount of experience. Ruche leaps from level 39 all the way to level 47, while Elymas climbs from level 45 to level 49. Exhausted but smiling, Elymas congratulates Ruche on an incredible performance. Overcome with relief, She admits she was on the verge of crying after missing 2 crucial attacks in a row and nearly believing she had doomed them both. Elymas simply laughs, reminding her that landing 2 critical 6s in only 4 attempts was still incredibly fortunate. Hearing those words, Rush can no longer hold back her emotions and quietly sniffles, relieved that they both survived one of the most dangerous battles of their lives. Rush looks at the magic stone they got and realizes it alone is worth around 2 million gold. Considering that adventurers stronger than them defeated a monster like this, Elymas starts wondering just how ridiculous their bank accounts must be. The mithril ingot is even crazier, with a sale price of 25 million gold. Since mithril is the strongest equipment material they can use at their current levels, they decide not to sell it. Instead, they'll return to Prona, find a talented blacksmith, and have it turned into a weapon. Elymas debates between a sword, knife, shield or armor, but settles on a knife for Rush since she's the fastest member of their team and the key to their attack strategy. He also feels he owes her a huge debt. With these 2 new drops, they've already earned more than they did at the Angel's Playbox, and thanks to the period's luck effect, Elymas thinks they might soon have enough gold to buy the Grim Reaper Grip skillbook for Rush. With that, they prepare to leave the dream hole. On the way out, Rush worries about running into another monster, but Elymas assures her that after defeating the Mithril Golem, nothing else here can really challenge them. Even the Dream Lord should be weaker. He then reveals there's a shortcut back to the entrance. They just need to defeat the Dream Lord. Elymas knows its attack pattern and thinks he still has enough strength left after the Mithril Golem fight, although constantly taking damage and healing could cause mental exhaustion. If he had needed Dragon Rage, he would have gone home, but in his current condition, there's no reason to avoid the fight. The Dream Lord is a rogue centipede called the Boulder Centipede. Rush isn't thrilled about fighting a giant bug, but she agrees to handle it. Before entering the boss room, Elymas checks Rush's new build. She has put all her points into full acrobatics and reaches level 18, unlocking multi-hit acrobatics. Elymas teaches her how to use it by launching herself into the air and riding the mana while maintaining her spin. Rush understands the technique but notices she'll be vulnerable right afterward. Elymas tells her not to worry because the Boulder Centipede has an obvious weakness to multi-hit attacks. At the deepest level of the Dream Hole, Elymas warns her not to let her guard down just because this boss is easier than the Mithril Golem. Inside, they find the level 60 Dream Lord Rogue Centipede with 156 HP and 71 MP. Elymas decides they should kill it quickly, grab the XP and items, and head back to town. The centipede charges them, and Rush immediately regrets having to deal with that many legs. They dodge its attack, and Elymas tells her to follow their plan. Using his shield, he launches Rush into the air, letting her land on the centipede's back. That's the monster's biggest weakness, since it has very few ways to attack enemies from there. Elymas keeps it distracted while Rush uses multi-hit acrobatics, slicing it repeatedly. The centipede fires Rock Blast, but Rush attacks again and drops its HP to 0. They earn 2,379 experience, with Rush jumping from level 47 to 52 and Elymas going from 49 to 54. Rush admits the Mithril Golem still felt stronger, but before they can celebrate, Elymas notices something is wrong. The defeated centipede starts releasing extremely hot steam. This phenomenon never happened with this monster in the game, so Elymas realizes the rules of this world may not perfectly match the game anymore. He suddenly tells Rush to get away because the thing isn't actually dead. The steam blasts her away, and Elymas catches her before she gets hurt. Then the centipede's shell starts cracking, and Elymas realizes the Dream Lord has triggered existence evolution. He apologizes to Rush because he never expected this to happen. Existence evolution can only be triggered by certain monsters under specific conditions, but even in his old magic world, the exact requirements were never revealed because they were so complicated. Elymas roughly knows the Boulder Centipede's requirements. It has to consume a certain number of magic stones, consume a certain number of corpses, and then be defeated by an adventurer. The problem is that this dream hole only appeared recently, so Elymas can't figure out how the centipede could have fulfilled those conditions. If it had been adventuring long enough to do so, the city would have been flooded with reports of deaths. He suspects someone or something may have been deliberately satisfying the conditions, but he can't understand why anyone would know about existence evolution, let alone trigger it on purpose. The one thing he knows for sure is that his game knowledge has led him to make the wrong call in this world, and Rush got dragged into it. Rush tells him not to worry and even suggests he send her flying with Shield Bash again so she can attack. But now that the monster has evolved, dice thrust is no longer a reliable option. Almas calculates that they'd need to roll at least 6 times, meaning they might have to attack around 10 times just to get enough successful rolls, and if they keep missing, auto-recovery will make the required number even higher. Then the boulder centipede completes its evolution, jumping straight from level 60 to level 75. Its appearance changes, including a glowing human-like eye, and its HP rises to 274 with 134 MP. Roosh freezes when she sees the level 75 monster, but Almas tells her to move. The centipede lunges at her, and Almas barely gets them both out of the way. With its insane speed, attack power, and new level, escaping is no longer realistic. So Almas proposes another plan to Roosh. She agrees, and Almas decides it's time to use Balance Breaker, a technique from his old magic world. He's going to bring this monstrosity down with a single blow from the Heavy Knight.